Homeless Washington woman, abused by corrupt police, but she's not alone. You think nobody's watching. Her voice barely rose above the rain, just enough to make both officers pause. A cold Washington night. Neon bleeding into puddles. Dana, invisible beneath a torn tarp, clutches the last thing she owns, while two badges step into the alley like they own the dark. They don't ask, they take. A backpack snatched, a threat whispered, a hand that lingers too long. Then, click. A shutter from the shadows. A hooded stranger phone, raised lens steady, in the rain. The rain had been falling for 3 straight days, the kind of relentless drizzle that seeped into bone and spirit alike. In downtown Tacoma, Washington, the gutters overflowed, and the cold wind off the Sound made even the neon-lit streets feel hostile. Dana sat hunched under the skeleton of a rusted fire, escaped the damp concrete wall at her back, a blue tarp pulled around her shoulders like a flimsy shield. The tarp used to be bright. Now, it was a dull, weather-stained gray, just like the rest of her life. She kept her backpack in her lap. Canvas faded thin, one strap, fraying to threads, but inside, it was everything she had left: a change of clothes, a thrift store blanket, a small Bible, and a folded photograph of a girl she hadn't seen in 10 years. Every so often, her fingers brushed the photo through the fabric. A habit, a reminder. Cars passed the mouth of the alley without slowing. People hurried by with umbrellas angled away from her, as if the rain could carry whatever she was. She didn't blame them. In the city, invisibility was a kind of safety. But tonight felt different. The air tasted heavier. Somewhere beyond the rain's constant hiss, an engine idled just a little too long. Dana shifted deeper into shadow, her eyes following the faint reflection of headlights on wet brick. Then she saw it, the patrol cruiser rolling past, slowing, reversing into the alley's mouth. 2 silhouettes inside, 2 doors opening, boots on pavement. Evening, a voice called, not unfriendly but not warm. Dana kept her head down. She'd learned that answering could sometimes be worse than staying silent. The second voice came softer-edged with something she didn't like. Come on now, sweetheart. We just want to talk. The taller one moved closer, the beam of his flashlight cutting across her face. The rain streaked silver over his badge, catching on the numbers. She tried to shift her backpack behind her, but he noticed. What's in the bag? He asked. Clothes, she said. Her voice barely carried over the rain. The shorter one stepped up beside him, his shadow blotting out the alley's thin light. No ID, no address. That's not good, Dana. Her stomach tightened. She'd never told them her name. The badge in the rain. The rain pooled at Dana's feet, cold enough to numb her toes through thin sneakers. She shifted her weight, trying to keep her backpack close. But the tall officer stepped into her space, his boots splashing in the water. Stand up, he ordered, voice flat. Dana hesitated. Why? Because I told you to. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The weight behind the words was enough. The shorter one circled to her side, scanning the alley like he owned it. Let's see what she's hiding. I'm not hiding anything, Dana said, keeping her voice steady. The taller officer bent his gloved hand, shooting out to grab the backpack. She held on. It was instinct, not defiance. But that single motion changed everything. Resisting, huh? The shorter one said, his smirk cutting through the rain. No, Dana replied quickly. Please, it's all I have. With a sharp tug, the taller officer wrenched the bag from her grip. It hit the wet concrete with a dull thud, the sound of her life being emptied out. He crouched and unzipped it. Clothes spilled onto the ground, soaking instantly. The Bible, the blanket, the folded photograph, the one she thought she'd hidden deep, fluttered free and landed in a puddle. The shorter one picked it up, turning it between his fingers. "This your kid?" Dana said nothing. "That's sweet," he said, slipping the photo into his own jacket pocket. "Consider it evidence." Her chest tightened, but before she could speak, he stepped closer, close enough that she could smell coffee and stale tobacco on his breath. "You know," he said, "almost conversational camping here's illegal. We could haul you in tonight. Or—" He let the word hang, eyes narrowing in a way that made her skin crawl. And then, click. A camera shutter, crisp and clean, over the rain's hiss. Both men froze. The tall one's head snapped toward the sound. The shorter one swung his flashlight down the alley's length, the beam slicing through the drizzle. "Who's there?" he barked. Nothing. Only the shimmer of wet brick, the hum of the cruiser's engine. But Dana saw it not in front of her, but in the reflection of a darkened shop window behind them. A hooded man stood in the shadows, phone-up lens steady. And when their eyes met through the glass, he gave her the smallest nod, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. The man in the hood. The hooded figure moved slowly, deliberately, letting the rain bead and run down his jacket. The glow from his phone lit his jaw, and the faintest curve of a mouth that wasn't smiling. He stopped just far enough away to keep control of the moment. The tall officer was the first to speak. "Sir, this is an active police matter. Turn off the phone." The man's voice carried easily over the rain. "I'm on a public sidewalk, and I'm recording an unlawful search and intimidation." Dana's breath caught. No one had ever said the words out loud before unlawful search. The shorter cop turned his jaw tight. "You don't know what you're getting into." The man didn't flinch. "Neither do you, but I've got both your badge numbers." He tilted the phone slightly so the red recording dot was obvious. A tense beat passed the rain, filling the space between them. The tall one shifted uncomfortably, casting a quick look at his partner. The shorter one's smirk had vanished. Dana could feel it, the balance of power tipping, even if just a little. "You think this will stop us?" the tall officer asked. "No," the man said calmly, "but it'll make sure the whole city sees you." That landed. A flicker of uncertainty crossed the shorter officer's face. He glanced back toward the cruiser. Finally, the tall one bent, scooped Dana's wet clothes back into the backpack, and shoved it toward her. "Get out of here, now." She took it without a word, her fingers numb from the cold and from the shock of what had just happened. The officers retreated to the cruiser, their boots splashing in the puddles. The hooded man tracked them with his phone until the engine roared and the headlights faded into the rain. Only then did he step closer to Dana. "You're safe for tonight," he said, "but they'll remember your face." Her voice was small. "Who are you?" "A friend, and someone who's been waiting for a moment like this." The reason he found her. Rain streamed off the hood of his jacket as he glanced down the empty street, making sure the cruiser wasn't circling back. When he finally looked at her again, there was no hesitation in his voice. "I've been watching those two for weeks," he said. "They're not just hassling people on the street. They're running something bigger." Dana clutched her backpack tighter. "What do you mean, bigger?" "They patrol the same few blocks. Always at night. They stop people, but nothing gets logged. No citations, no arrests on record. And anyone who pushes back ends up with charges they can't fight. Or they disappear." Dana's stomach tightened. "Disappear," he nodded once. "Homeless shelters have lists. I've been tracking names. People vanish, not to jail, not to hospitals. Just gone." Her throat went dry. "Why tell me this?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a laminated slip of paper. When she saw it, her knees nearly gave out. It was a booking sheet, her name, her photo, a list of charges. Except she'd never been arrested. "They've been carrying this around," he said. "Means they're setting you up. One night soon, they'll find something on you, drugs, a weapon, and this will make it look legit." Dana stared at the plastic in his hand, the rain distorting her own face through the sheet. Her voice shook. "You could take this to internal affairs." He shook his head. "Without real proof, they'll bury it. And me." "That's where you come in," he continued. "They have a stash house, not just for money and drugs. They keep files there. Names, photos, fake charges. Yours will be in there." Dana backed up a step. "You want me to break in?" "Not exactly. You won't be breaking in. You'll be walking in. They've already used your face in their files. That means if you show up, it won't trigger alarms. But you can get me inside." A shiver ran through her, and it wasn't from the cold rain. This man was asking her to walk straight into the lair of the people who wanted to destroy her. But the alternative, letting them plant evidence and take her away forever, was worse. She swallowed hard. "Where?" His mouth tightened. 3 blocks from here, and they're there right now. The house. They weren't supposed to find the stranger led her through side streets slick with rain. His hood pulled low, his pace quick but deliberate. Dana followed her mind, a tangled fear of what she was walking into, fighting with the fear of what would happen if she turned back. 3 blocks felt like 30. When they stopped, it was in front of a rundown duplex with peeling paint and blinds drawn tight. The place looked abandoned, but a faint light glowed through a gap in the curtains. "This is it," he murmured. "They use the ground floor. The upstairs is empty, or so they claim." "How do you know?" she asked. "I've seen them come and go. Always the same time, always carrying boxes they didn't have when they went in." He led her around the side where a narrow alley separated the house from the next building. Halfway down, he pointed to a door with chipped blue paint. "Maintenance entrance. The lock's busted. You go first." Her pulse hammered as she pushed the door open. It creaked too loud in the rain-heavy silence, but no one came. Inside smelled of mildew and old carpet. A hallway stretched ahead, ending in another door. He motioned for her to keep moving his phone now, in his hand camera on recording. The second door opened into a small room lit by a single desk lamp. Filing cabinets lined one wall. On the desk, stacks of manila folders and a laptop sat beside a half-empty cup of coffee, steam still curling from it. Dana's eyes darted to the nearest cabinet. The labels were handwritten, "Vagrancy drug, possession assault." She pulled open a drawer. Inside, rows of folders, each with a name, a photo, and a date. Some had mugshots. Some had candid photos clearly taken from a distance. Her fingers froze on one file. It was hers. Same photo, from the laminated slip, the same fake charges, plus a notation at the bottom, pending May 14th. Behind her, the stranger swore under his breath. She turned to see what he'd found. On the desk, a separate folder, black unmarked, lay open. Inside was a typed list. 37 names. She scanned them, her heart pounding. Some she recognized from the shelter. Some she'd heard about, whispered in conversations that ended too quickly. Every name had one word next to it: cleared. "What does that mean?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. The man's voice was grim. "It means they're gone." Before she could speak, footsteps creaked from the hallway they'd entered through. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. He glanced at her. "Time to go." The door opens. The footsteps stopped just beyond the thin wooden door to the hallway. Dana could hear the slow drag of breath, the weight of someone standing still listening. Her fingers tightened on the folder in her hand. The stranger raised a finger to his lips, but his other hand slid inside his jacket, gripping something she couldn't see. The knob turned. The door swung open. Framed in the doorway, dripping from the rain, stood Officer Kellen, the shorter one from the alley. The smirk she'd seen earlier was gone. In its place was a flat, predatory calm. "Well, well," he said, stepping inside. "Didn't think you had the nerve to wander in here, sweetheart." Dana's pulse thudded in her ears. Behind her, the stranger angled his phone so it was still recording the red light blinking steadily. Kellen's gaze slid to him. "You again. Thought I told you to turn that thing off." "You did," the man replied. "I didn't." A tense beat passed. Kellen shut the door behind him with a slow push, the latch clicking into place. "You think you're smart," Kellen said, eyes moving between them. "You're not. This is where your little crusade ends." Dana forced herself to speak. "Why my name? Why me?" His expression didn't change. "You're just another file. Easy to bury, easy to forget." Her grip on the folder tightened. And the others, the ones marked cleared. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes' annoyance. "You don't want to know." The stranger stepped forward just enough to draw Kellen's attention. "You've been sloppy. I've got you on video in the alley. Now we have your files. You think internal affairs won't?" Kellen's laugh cut him off. "You think IA's not in on it?" Before the words could sink in, a second set of footsteps sounded from the hallway. A shadow filled the doorway, and Dana's heart lurched. It was Officer Grant, the tall one. But behind him was someone else. Someone she recognized instantly. It was Marcy, the shelter coordinator, the only person Dana had trusted in months. And she was holding a key to the front door. The betrayal rainwater dripped from Marcy's hood, forming a small dark circle on the carpet. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes didn't look surprised to see Dana standing in the stash room. "Dana," she said softly, "you weren't supposed to be here." The stranger shifted, keeping his phone aimed at all three of them. "You know her?" he asked. Marcy's gaze flicked to him, then back to Dana. "I told you to stay out of trouble. That was for your own good." Dana's voice cracked. "You told them about me." Marcy hesitated just long enough for the answer to be clear. "They pay me to keep order at the shelter, to make sure certain people end up in the right place at the right time." "The right place?" Dana asked, her stomach nodding. "You mean here, in their files." Officer Kellen leaned against the desk, smug again, now that the pieces were falling into place. "She's been our eyes and ears. Knows who's alone, who won't be missed, who has no one to fight for them. Makes our job a hell of a lot easier." The stranger's jaw tightened. "You're trafficking them." Grant, the tall one, gave a humorless smile. "We're cleaning up the streets and making sure we get something back for the trouble. You call it whatever you want." Dana's grip on the folder was so tight, the edges dug into her palm. "All those names. They're gone because of you." Marcy didn't look away. "They're gone because the world doesn't care. At least this way I get to keep the shelter open for the rest." The room felt smaller with every word. Kellen stepped toward the stranger, his hand hovering near his belt. "You're leaving your phone here, and you're walking out with nothing." The stranger didn't move. His thumb hovered over the screen like a trigger. One button, and this goes live. For the first time, Grant's composure faltered. Kellen's eyes narrowed. Marcy glanced at the door. Outside, somewhere in the street, a siren wailed faintly. "That's our ride," the stranger said, a faint smile touching his lips. But Dana noticed his hand trembling, whether from adrenaline or fear she couldn't tell. The last choice. The siren grew louder, a high, urgent wail slicing through the rain. Kellen's gaze darted to Grant, then to Marcy, calculating whether the sound meant help for them or trouble. The stranger's thumb still hovered over his phone screen. "One tap," he said evenly, "and this isn't just on the cloud, it's everywhere." Grant took a step forward. "You won't make it out of here." "Maybe not," the stranger said, "but you won't make it to your shift tomorrow." Dana's heart pounded. She wasn't supposed to be part of a standoff, she was supposed to be invisible. But now all eyes were on her. The siren stopped abruptly. Tires splashed in the street outside. A car door slammed. Heavy boots crunched on wet gravel. Kellen cursed under his breath. Marcy moved toward the desk, sliding a drawer open. Dana acted before she could think. She grabbed the unmarked black folder from the table and bolted toward the maintenance door. Grant lunged, fingers grazing her sleeve, but she slipped free, the folder clutched to her chest. The stranger moved too, blocking the officers just long enough for her to shove the door open. Cold rain hit her face like glass shards. Outside, 2 uniformed officers were already crossing the yard. For a split second, hope flared until she saw the look in their eyes. They were smiling. "Back up. For them." The stranger burst out behind her, his phone still raised. "Run," he barked. She sprinted toward the street, water splashing up her legs, lungs burning. Behind her, voices shouted, boots pounded. Someone cursed her name. She didn't stop until she rounded the corner, pressing herself into the shadows between 2 buildings. The stranger caught up. Seconds later, breath ragged. He held up the phone, showing her the live stream. Thousands of viewers. The comments rolling so fast she couldn't read them. "You did it," he said, grinning for the first time. "They can't bury this now." Dana looked down at the folder in her hands, 37 names that could no longer be erased. Her clothes were soaked, her body trembling, but for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. Somewhere behind them, more sirens wailed, the kind that weren't on anyone's payroll. The rain kept falling, washing the night clean, drop by drop. Dana slipped the folder under her jacket and met the stranger's eyes. "Let's finish this," she said, and together they stepped out of the shadows.